What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we return after 3 long years with Sky of Sumo Cyco. Great to be able to talk with you again.
Thanks, Alex. So happy to be back.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been 3 years since that. It feels like yesterday, but it seems like a lifetime ago as well.
Yeah, I hear you with the whole the year that was skipped. It just feels like it would just didn't exist almost because there was no live shows.
Yeah, I know. It sucks. It sucks, but we'll be getting there. Things are getting better. Knock on wood. But
Yeah, 100%.
But thank you for giving us some new music to give us something to look forward to when live shows do return. The new album, Initiation, is absolutely amazing. Could the first three singles that you released, Bystander, Vertigo, and No Surrender, maybe serve as like a good representation of what the entirety of Initiation will sound like, or are just those little snippets of it and there's a lot more to come?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of elements in those three songs that will be echoed throughout the record, but there's also a few surprises too that you kind of have to listen to the whole thing to be able to hear.
Yeah. Well, I've always thought that, from listening to Lost in Psycho City and the Opus Mar album, you bring in so many elements of, like punk and rock and heavy metal. It almost seems like experimenting with your style is almost just kind of like the way for Sumo Cyco, right?
Yes, 100%. And I think with the fact that this record kind of had a few stops and starts in the release process due to COVID, due to the fact that we signed a deal with Napalm, due to the fact that we had tours that came up out of nowhere that we kind of decided we were just going to go jump on and instead of, work on finishing the record. It gave us these moments of reflection to kind of at the record and kind of wonder what elements are not represented here, what types of songs do we feel are Sumo Cyco vibe that isn't on the record. And we kind of wrote in chunks of time rather than writing all a few months straight. It was a few songs here, and then we kind of went on a tour, kind of got pumped from being on tour and wrote some songs that we were like, these would sound great live. And then we're stuck in quarantine and wrote a bunch of songs that we were like pulling our hair out, all frustrated with the world. So there was a lot of different emotions and different vibes that kind of got captured through the process of writing this record.
And this didn't just feel like you were picking up where you left off after Opus Mar, right? With the New Deal and, with a new world, so to speak, it almost seems like that this was like a new beginning for Sumo Cyco in a way, right?
In a way, I mean, for instance, there are a few songs that we kind of wrote, I think, pretty close to the end of when we were finishing with Opus Mar. For instance, Run with the Giants and Love You Wrong. And then as time progressed, we kind of just kept evolving, kept experimenting, like you said. And I think one of the things that makes this record really different from the previous two records is how many songs we really had to narrow down before we came to our final record lineup. It was a lot more than usual. Usually we have a handful, maybe two or three songs that didn't make the cut. This time it was like we were literally, just slashing out songs left and right because we just had too many songs to fit on the record. So it gave us a really, I feel like, concentrated, quality of song when you're kind of really being harsh on yourself and picking one over the other. It was a tough process, but we managed.
Is what we're gonna hear on the new album like almost kind of like how these songs were originally written, originally structured, or did these songs kind of like change a lot over a span of time?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. I feel like Matt is our guitarist producer who really has evolved, I feel, from the previous records as a producer and engineer. He's really, really taken in his stride to learn more about mixing and all the different types of, I don't even know, he knows more about that stuff than I do, but he's dove into it a lot. And especially we had the opportunity to record two songs in Vegas with producer Kane Churko. One of the songs is Vertigo that was just released, as well as a song on the record called Overdrive. And Kane, has this beautiful facility in Vegas and so super talented and approaches kind of songwriting and production in a bit of a different way, a very kind of just attack it type of like go 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 way. And he's so fast, like he's literally mixing and editing while I'm actually recording. Like it's unbelievable how fast he works. But I think what was also great about that experience, not just to take home 2 songs, but the fact that Matt kind of created a relationship with Kane and learned a few things, and then came back home and tried to make the rest of the songs kind of match Kane's mixes so that they would feel congruent on a record together. And he kind of like, just like kind of, I feel, evolved and brought his production up to meet Kane's song. So I think it was almost like kind of like a challenge when he knew these 2 songs on the record were done by, Kane. He wanted to make sure that the rest of the songs didn't feel like there was any less power behind them.
Hmm. And like I also really do enjoy the lyricism because I feel like with both your voice and your lyrics, the albums are almost kind of like a it, it has such a narrating aspect to it. You know what I mean? Like I get lost in it. Like I have to start the album with "Love You Wrong" and end the album with "The Dance Is Doomed" because like I feel like this album isn't very as I like to say, shuffle friendly. Like I really like to be
Right.
engaged into it. Has there ever been a time where maybe your lyrics or maybe your you had like a story in mind and maybe that could help influence the sound of the music itself?
Oh, so much. So many different stories and narrations going on in my mind all the time. For one song that comes to mind, I just remember Matt playing me the instrumental for Love You Wrong. And I just pictured these 2 people just being torn apart, like physically, just like where they're reaching out for each other. They're just being like completely ripped apart. And I kind of related that to like some type of tragic love story. And then kind of came up with the name to name the Skull character Tragic. And then my character is Glory. And it just kind of like evolved from that. And we put it in the music video. And all those stories kind of have a thread in my mind to a bigger picture, which is my world of Psycho City that we've kind of created over the years through our music videos and through kind of our reoccurring characters, such as our mascot, which is like the skull with the psycho eyes. And they're called our Terranauts, and they show up kind of throughout our history in different music videos. So there is this kind of alternate universe that I fantasy world, I guess you could say, that I kind of retreat to in my mind sometimes. And that's sometimes where it's almost like you can play out all the different situations that haven't happened in real life out there in the Psycho City world. But real life kind of interjects. It's almost like a parallel universe in some ways, where it's like something crazy happens over here and it feels like it affects my fantasy world to like go over here, kind of like never ending story or something like that. So but yeah, that's kind of like, I've always been a kid with a great imagination and always loved retreating to that place. And I think that's why I'm such a dreamer, where I just keep going for goals that seem impossible sometimes, just because I'm always kind of almost not completely in touch with reality.
Well, that's something I've always admired about Sumo Cyco. Like I discovered you pretty much on the like first saw you live on the first time I interviewed you, and then really got interested after watching that show, and then seeing you with Ginger, and then seeing you with the 69 Eyes, and like does it almost feel like, because it's not just a sonic experience when I'm listening to the album or seeing you live, there's a visual aspect behind it, there is like an alternate universe you create, you really make the venue into like your own reality in a way, in your own realm. Do you almost feel that like within the album or within the live presence you almost like portray, for lack of better words, like a character?
Yeah, 100%. I think that trying on different, I guess, characters or outfits or personalities, it kind of adds some freedom. And I think that if you talk to any like actor, they would tell you that, like, being a character gives them some type of freedom that they didn't have otherwise. And I think that that's what's really fun about expressing ourselves through music, through art and creation, is we can really become the dreams that we want to be. We can put on that outfit and walk on stage and you're literally kind of putting it on as if you're like heading into like battle, like an armor, to like be like, I'm going to be so badass right now, like this is the things I need in order to get myself in that mindset where I can really feel like I can stand in front of all these people and try to be a ringleader here to make them party their asses off. But it does kind of take a shift in your mind. And this is one thing I tell people who have like stage fright and have trouble like performing in front of crowds, when they ask me, how do I get over that fear? It really is about kind of like living completely in the moment. As soon as you're worried about the note that might have been flat like a few lines ago, or you're worried about something coming up in the set that you're nervous about, you lose your presence in the moment, and you should always be completely just enjoying the moment. And if something happens in the past, just literally leave it there and just keep pushing forward and keep going through the set. And so yeah, it is kind of like another dimension or something that you're in. You're just like in this perfect flow in the moment. And there's very few times I think in our lives where we completely just live in the moment. We're always kind of worried about past, present, future, or past and future. That's what I think makes the live experience so beautiful and so awesome. Is like you just hope everyone is literally living in that moment.
Yeah, and like I'd imagine because you were in the world of acting as well, and there's been a small handful of musicians who were in the sort of theater or acting sort of world before going onto the
Mhm.
stage and bringing it into metal. Does that other passion of yours maybe play into how you present yourself on stage in a way?
Yeah, I mean, it plays into not only on stage but in music videos, in being able to handle doing a ton of social media, um, having that side of me that is a performer. If you think about it, it goes beyond just performing on stage. Like everything can be a show if you want it to be. You know what I mean? Like you can come up with like a crazy idea for a music video, make it more theatrical, or when you kind of like go on a live stream, you can have that like mentality the way you do when you get on stage, where you're just like trying to be the life of the party and the host. And I think that everyone has those different sides to us. We just need like permission sometimes to let them out and let them be free to like do their thing. And but yeah, it is kind of fun. I really am a geek when it comes to trying to play other characters. I remember one time I thought it was funny during the last album cycle that I would try to be like the conduct not the conductor, but like the ticket clerk at the train station. That our last record was kind of based on a train. It's called Opus Mars. So I made this like treasure hunt with all our fans where they had to find the ticket clerk. And once they came across my video on like this random Facebook page that was like a code to find it, it's like they got to listen to me tell them like clues about the record. And it's kind of like this weird treasure hunt that you expect in some type of like theater production or something, where you go to like, I don't know, some amusement park or something, and they have this like character being like, I live at this old haunted house. Welcome to my house or whatever. And you're like, it's fake, but at the same time, it's like you want to buy into like the fun of it, right? It's like we're
Yeah.
we're we're in our imaginary worlds now.
I could easily see like a Sumo Cyco themed amusement park. Like that has to be a goal for like the future. That would be
That would
so
be sick. Yeah.
and
I'd love that.
and because you have this character that you portray, does that maybe like when you're singing in the vocal booth or when you're playing in the studio, do you almost feel that like you're channeling a similar energy to that as you do in the live presence, or do you still consider playing live and songwriting two completely separate arts altogether?
Yeah, when you're in the studio, you really, I think that is the challenge, is really trying to perform on the mic in a small, tight little room with nobody there, the way you would if you were in a crowd with tons of energy and people around you. And like, it's hard to always capture that. And I think some people do struggle with the fact that we do come across a lot different live than sometimes on the recording, because of the fact that it's just, like I said, you're in the moment, you're getting this raw aggression of real, like, heavy, huge speakers kind of pushing the sound onto you. You're around all these other people. So I know that a lot of tips that I've heard from like other people that are in the studio that do similar music is sometimes they'll just like run around a building, or like just do some jumping jacks, or get super sweaty so that they feel that same like intenseness that they do when they're on stage, to try to emulate that. But for me, the way that we write, and I think a lot of artists write this way too, who have home studios, is you kind of record yourself as you write a song. So say if you hear a vocal line that you're like, oh, okay, this is really cool, you want to record it to remember it, but you also record it onto the actual track. And it's easy enough to do it properly, so you just go for it. And it's only in certain certain circumstances where I feel like I have to literally go back over my original and do like a new proper performance, but most of the time I'm just catching it while I'm writing it. So yeah, so it's a different experience. I think in the studio it's something I'm still learning on how to exactly capture the energy we have live, but then again, that's what like a live CD's for, is to capture that, crowd and the kind of raw emotion that comes into my voice. But it's always a challenge to see like how close the the songs on the record are to our live show, and normally it's kind of a hard thing to predict because when we write the songs, we've never played the songs live. So it used to be back in the day when bands were on tour, they would test their songs on the road before they would record them. So they'd like practice them so many times on the road that they would record them afterwards, after they had kind of played them 50 times. They'd worked out like all those little things you do live. And then with our music, when we're writing, we kind of write the and record first. So what the songs turn into in the live show is almost like to be seen. It's like you don't know what's going to happen because you haven't tried it yet. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. That's a good question because I think that we think about that and kind of like the idea that not a lot of people play new material live because there's so many like recording devices out there, right? So if you have like a brand new single or whatever, as soon as you record it live, someone's going to be posting it out there.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of pressure behind it. And on top of that, I think one thing that you also had like above other bands in this is that you've played with a variety of different bands too, like playing with the Butcher Babies and Nonpoint to playing with Ginger to playing with the 69 Eyes. I mean, that's a lot of elements carried there on the periodic table of subgenres, as I like to say. And like I'd imagine
Yeah.
that like you may have had like different reactions or maybe different it played in front of different audiences and therefore they absorbed your work in a different way, right?
Yeah, of course. And I think there's always something to learn on every tour. And you're right. Different acts and different tours have like different types of fans that come out who, someone may really love on one tour. They're like, oh, yeah, we love all the heaviest stuff that you do, like all the blast beats. But then you go on another tour and people are like super into the groove rock or, different elements you can kind of see like, okay, this crowd kind of leans a little in this direction or that direction on the stuff that they like to see. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of almost like a game we play with ourselves when we go in front of a crowd that is no one knows who we are. It's kind of like a cold crowd. We're kind of trying to warm them up for the main act. It is a challenge to be like, okay, how do we win these guys over? How do we kind of figure out which buttons to push to make them finally come out of their shells and like let us kind of entertain them, and you can kind of see the switch in their minds, whether it's sometimes it's a cover song. Like if you nail the right cover song and you're like, okay, we're going on this tour. We know that the crowd's going to be kind of like probably into these types of bands as well. Like let's pick a good cover song that they would know. Sometimes you play that and you see their eyes go like, oh, I get it now. Like that's something I can recognize that can make me buy into you guys. Or sometimes it's like the gimmicks. Like for me, I always love any way I can get into the crowd and sing in people's faces. Some people love that, and some people just like retreat because they're like, please don't sing in my face. I don't want to be like a spotlight on my face. So you can kind of tell like where the balance is, but it's fun. It's a fun game to play for sure.
Absolutely. Crowd interaction and like stage presence is almost kind of like something that you need. Can you even practice that? Do you almost have to like practice that as much as the song itself in a way?
For me, I'm very lucky that it comes pretty naturally, but I have actually worked as a coach for some people when it comes to like stage presence. I think a lot of people find a little bit of comfort in like some type of routine, not like a choreography routine, but something like, for instance, they know that at this part of the song, right before the song hits, they put their fist in the air, and then as soon as it drops in, they kind of go into that, and they kind of know, okay, I'm gonna in this part of the song, I'm gonna like walk across the stage slow, or in this part of the song, I'm gonna headbang. And those types of things kind of bring comfort to a lot of people I've worked with in that kind of world. So practice actually makes them a lot more comfortable because the more they feel like they don't have to think about some of the moves that they're doing, it seems more natural. But for me, it's almost like everything's unplanned. And then as you go through a tour, certain things start to stick. Like certain things where I'm like, oh, I just always tend to do this at the same part for some reason because it just feels right. Or I'll come up with like this move where I'm like doing like, like cutting my throat off or something. And I find myself watching back videos that I've done it like every single time without intentionally even thinking about it because it just kind of rolls out that way. So for me, it is more about just kind of feeling free, not feeling because as soon as I come up with like some type of routine, it feels a little binding to me where I'm like, but what if somebody shouts at me across the stage over there? I want to be able to break the entire routine, tell my band to like stop, and they stop, and then I can go over and like, call out the guy who was heckling me or whatever. I love feeling a little bit more free to do those things so that I don't feel like locked into some sort of like ABC situation.
Yeah, that's
So, but obviously, like anything, the more you do it, the more it just becomes like a well-oiled machine, right?
well, that's something that I've always admired about a Sumo Cyco performance is that because there is sort of like a choreography that goes into it, with the character that you portray, and you clearly have mastered the art of stage presence, but at the same time, there is a lot of freedom on stage. I almost feel like you're not like confined to a script or a choreography or like it just seems like there's and hell, like it doesn't even seem like you guys are even focused too much on like what the next song in the set list is. It just seems like you get lost, and in turn the audience gets lost with you.
Yeah, I think that's what we want to do is, we were talking about it, Matt and I, about how we've always put the show in front of the actual like technical playing of the music. So if something is going to work well for the show, that takes priority over like being super super perfect. Like Matt would rather make a few bad notes and be able to spin his guitar around and jump off speakers than have like the perfect technical performance, because I think those things like that's kind of like I feel like hold some bands back because they want to sound so perfect that sometimes they don't realize that the audience isn't as like, intense, like wondering every single note, that sometimes making those grand gestures of just having fun and like, Matt sometimes will like throw a beer in my face or I'll like be like, haha, you suck or whatever. Like those are moments that I think the crowd takes away from a show more than, like, oh, that third verse, that specific riff was so flawless. Like to me it's sometimes about having like that bigger picture of the show. And so we really pride ourselves in being kind of like I guess you could call it like the party starters, wanting to make everyone just kind of have fun and get out of their shell.
Definitely, definitely. That's what it is. It's a party, and like I mean, you don't focus on the technical elements, and that's fine because it's not like Sumo Cyco is like as animals as leaders for something where everybody's like just focused on the
Right.
fretboard and the pedal and the guitar. I mean, Animals as
Yeah.
Leaders is a great show, but you ain't getting away with botching a note at that show. So
Yeah. No, I actually had the pleasure of going to a show and watching side stage on those guys. And yes, like total technical, amazing players. And that's, what people come to see when they see a band like that. But for us, I feel like they want to see, they want to see me flip my hair around and they want to see like, me jump on Matt's shoulders and they want to be able to like, sing along and kind of be part of the show. So I think that it's just like the different strokes for different folks, different vibes for different people. It's just the way it is. But yeah, we're definitely more of like taking a page out of the kind of, I guess you could call it the party handbook.
awesome. And I have two more questions for you, but one thing I was curious about is going back to this character that you portray on stage. Is this like maybe a direct extension of who you personally are? Is this just a another side of Sky, or do you feel like that in Sumo Cyco and on stage you're portraying somebody completely out of your element, like somebody who's a complete uh, alter ego, if you will?
Yeah. There's a little bit of all of that, I think, mixed up in there. I do feel like it's me because I live and breathe what I do. I live and breathe, doing the music. All the lyrics are mine from my experience. All the times we've performed in front of different people, I carry all those moments with me in my heart. Like I honestly, if there's some, I could think of like, I picture it like three or four moments come flashing through my mind, thinking of like times that I've played a show where someone in the crowd was like holding their best friend and just like loving their lives. And like those things go through my mind when I'm performing to like remind me how important it is that, I do what I do. And that's really ingrained in me as a person that realizes like that's kind of my motivation in life, is to try to bring those moments to people where I give them the place, I guess, the stage. In their eyes it's the audience, but for me it's like their space to be free, to be in the moment, to enjoy themselves, to have that night off, whether that's their best night of their week or their month, where they can just let things go and not worry about the stresses in their lives. And so that's kind of like something I hold dear to me. So it definitely is like those building blocks all make me the performer that I am. But I think that having a little bit of that side of you that is free enough to like play as a character gives you that extra confidence that kind of takes it over the top, so that you don't feel like you're just like completely exposing every everything about you. For instance, I remember being younger and I was so crushed by certain things that would happen in my career that I really took it so personally, that it was like I was terrible or I sucked because I couldn't achieve these goals. And I had to realize that I was more than my career. I was a person living an experience through life, and I was trying to be a good friend, and all these other elements of my life mattered. It wasn't just like how successful I was as a performer. So I had to kind of separate myself a little bit and create that alter ego of like, okay, she's the performer that goes out and kicks ass, but no matter what she does, I'm still, me at the end of the day, and her success or her lack of success doesn't change this person, who is just always going to be hopefully a down to earth good person that'll just like hang out with you and have coffee or a beer or whatever it is. So I think that it's good to have a little bit of separation, so you don't get so caught up in your life as a singer performer is like every single thing about you, where every single fail, because it does feel like that. It does feel like if you don't have a certain success or you do something, it can kind of change you. As like, I'd see a lot of bands like they're doing well, egos go up, doing not well, their egos go down. But to me it's like, let's just always be the same person and just let that fluctuate and do its thing, try our best, but we should still just all be kind of grounded in ourselves to begin with,
Yeah,
if that makes
evolution
sense.
evolution as a person doesn't mean a greater ego. There is a way to move forward, like, and stuff. And the final question I wanted to ask you is just kind of going back to your songwriting, because again, I really just I the first time I heard Sumo Cyco, I found it like insane that this came from the mind of another human. Like, it really seemed like such like an alternate parallel universe. For you to get that inspiration, for you specifically, like when it comes to either writing the lyrics or coming up with new song ideas or having a new visual experience or whatever, does ideas sometimes just come out of nowhere, or do you almost have like a usual go-to place that you need to be in order to get inspired?
Yeah, to me, I write the best when I'm happy, when I'm in a good place.
So not metal.
I I sometimes find that it's almost like I have to really push it out of me when I'm in kind of like a having a crappy day or whatever. And sometimes it can actually help me get to a better place. But I think with the visuals and like how the whole world plays out is, I do feel like when I kind of start writing lyrics, especially, I will, just like lose myself in the music, and I will just let it like pour out like it's a waterfall, or like you're just literally just any idea that pops into your head. Just don't question yourself whether it's a good idea or a bad idea at that time. Just let every idea, and I just write everything on like a big page, and just like if I feel an emotion or whatever, I just let it out. And then when I look at that page, I start seeing certain themes kind of pop out to me. So, for instance, like this one song, I was thinking about the music video recently, and the first image that popped out to me was being like alone in a massive ocean. So you think, what does that mean to you? That means helplessness, feeling lost, feeling like you're scared, you're panicking, you're like, what's going on? And what are you looking for? Like, what is your goal? Are you trying to get to shore? What are you looking for? And I was like, oh, maybe I'm looking for my heart. Like my heart's like lost and I need to find it. I'm sailing out somewhere to find where it is because I don't know where it is. And these kind of metaphors kind of roll into my brain and kind of become visual. They become, the lyrics. And I kind of think, okay, what if, what's the feeling I would feel in that situation? And what am I trying to get at? And it just kind of like comes out. And then I find also with lyrics that sometimes I'm writing a story and it's kind of a metaphor and I don't really understand the real life meaning of what that means until months later, where I look back at that period of time that I was writing the song and I was like, oh man, you were dealing with that, struggle in your life. No wonder you were feeling that you were lost at sea, because obviously lost at sea in the real life meant that you were feeling like you didn't know which direction to go in this part of your life. You know what I mean? So certain things are almost like kind of messages to my past or future self to be like, yeah, you're going through this, but at the end of the day, like there's always that little nugget of hope somewhere written in between the lyrics, to like keep going. And so yeah, it's fun. I Songwriting is one of my biggest passions, and it's hard to completely describe what it's like when you fully are in that flow of just feeling like you just are, in the moment, just like letting it all out. And it just is so therapeutic and it feels so good to the soul.
Yeah, but writing from a happy place, that's not very metal. I mean, yeah, I'm kidding. But
It's
but
true though. It's I find that it's when I'm in my darkest points that it's like I critique myself more than I do when I'm happy. So it lets me feel freer to explore versus when I'm kind of in a shitty mood, I'm like down on myself. So then I'm like, I'll write one line, I'll be like, that's not good enough. And I'll write another, I'll be like, that's not good enough. And I'll get frustrated with myself rather than just being like, doesn't matter if it's not good enough now. We'll develop the song as it goes. Just start the wheels turning and you'll get there.
yeah,
So
and
it's
right.
almost like I'm pretty good at writing dark subjects even when I'm not in the moment feeling dark.
And it's also better because you don't want the songwriting process or like just any part of your creativity to become deteriorating where you almost need to rely on pain and destruction in order to move on it, because
Right.
otherwise you don't want your source of getting rid of negativity to be the source of negativity when you go back into it.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Yeah. It is true though that it is a fine balance because writing, like you said, you don't want it to be something that you depend on, like needing to be in a breakup or something for you to like feel like you can write a song, or that you need to be in a shitty depressed place. But at the same time, music is a great way to process those emotions in the most healthy way possible. So it's kind of that balance of trying to like not depend on it to need it to write songs, but also use the songwriting as a way to cope with your life and struggles.
Yeah, I read a like a satire article one time. It was kind of morbid, but it made sense. It was like a depressed songwriter runs out of dead friends and family members to write about, and now has nothing else to write about. I'm like, damn, that's so messed
Oh
up, but it's so true. Like,
no.
yeah, but before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such a great conversation. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote with the release of Initiation? Obviously, thanks to this virus that shall not be named. Obviously, shows aren't on the table at the moment, but when music does come back, obviously we'll see Sumo Cyco on the road a lot. And is there maybe like a live stream performance or new merch that you would like to plug while we're here?
Yeah, so the record comes out May 7th, and any merch slash vinyl, or we have this special album book that has the CD in the back and it's filled with all this different art inside. It's really fun, lyrics and all that good stuff. All can be found at sumocyco.com. And that'll also take you to direct you to the Napalm store. And if you're interested in following us on socials, it's just Sumo Cyco, SUMOCYCO.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sky. Great to talk to you again. Everybody, we are here with Sumo Cyco Initiation coming out May 7th via Napalm Records. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.